So I always like to start there and say, again, don't overthink it. Think about what you have access to. For $15, you can buy gardening tools to talk about westward expansion, things like that. So look online. You will be surprised at how little money some of these things cost, and you'll be competing with museums around the country also trying to buy them. So that's a first thing. First things first is you obviously have to get the object and think creatively, and you can do it on the cheap, I promise you. Uh, what it looks like, I think, is what excites me. And the good news is that once you get this process down that I'm about to walk through, you can use it as much as you want with all kinds of items, and you can also apply it to non-three-dimensional objects, whether it's photos, works of art, etc. Here's the big secret about New York Historical: we are basically just pushing the same three-step process over and over and over again. So what we always do when we're working with an object is we start with our observations. You want to have students just examine and study that item, and that's where the scientific method can really come in handy, because your students might be familiar with that, of like, let's take all the evidence in, pass it around, let them hold it, let them feel it, let them knock on it, let them pull on it if appropriate and it's not going to break. Let them smell it, listen for what that sound looks like, tell them to use all of their senses except maybe taste, really engage with the item. I really am a big supporter of allowing the teacher to just stand at the front of the room and write down what they're hearing in terms of observations. Allow the teacher to be the note taker. You can even have a system of, we're going to pass it around twice. So that's that way the second time it gets harder, but surely everybody can say something, size, shape, color, material, and you want to keep it to observations. Don't guess what it is. Don't make assumptions. Don't make hypotheses. Just think about, again, what is in front of you. What is the, if someone says small, the next person can say, well, how small? And there's your STEM, right? How many inches, how many centimeters, how many pounds? Start to make it interdisciplinary. From there, then you start to move into the area, the territory of, well, what is this thing? And every time you start talking about that, you go back to the evidence. Well, how do you know that?
Mhm.
What makes you think that? And that's what can be fun about using an object like a coffee cup, is it's easy to say, well, it's a coffee cup from Dunkin' Donuts. Tell me how you know. Well, it's written on it. And how do you know it's for coffee? Well, interesting. It's made out of paper. It says, it might say caution hot. So I'm thinking it's a hot beverage. Here are hot beverages that we drink. Is it coffee? Is it tea? How do we know? So you always want to kind of push this is your chance to push the envelope a little bit. How do we know? How do we know? How do we know? And as you start to formulate together as a class or as a group what this thing is, then you can start moving into the third layer of conversation, is, well, okay, so what does that tell us about history or whatever subject it is that you're teaching? What are the takeaways? So at some point in that process, you as the teacher come in and say, yes, everyone, you're absolutely right. This is a coffee cup from Dunkin' Donuts from 2024. What do all of these observations, what does this conversation tell us about this society, about this era? And so with the coffee cup, it's that people want their caffeine. All of these options written on it tell us that they like it to have it their way, and there's a lot of customization. They care about recycling because there's a recycling symbol on it, but also they don't care that much because they're willing to get a new paper cup every day and throw it away. So we start to think about these inferences, and the same thing with items. If we think about this example you talking about with Ellis Island, thinking about all the things you and I were talking about. What would it have been like to be the person using this item? What would it have been like to be the patient during this examination? What would it have felt like to have that on your skin? What is the value add? How are we? What is the balance of power? What are the dynamics in this moment between the people interacting with this item? That's where you, as the educator, really get to open the floodgates, because you can ask the questions you're really trying to get at, which is, what does it mean? But it all starts with that very simple question of, what do you see? What do you notice?